This is super tragic, but a guy I met on my thru hike of the Appalachian Trail, Mullet Mike, this guy hiked all the way from freaking Georgia to southern Maine, over 2,000 miles, and he just couldn't complete that last stretch of the trail because... Woo! What's up, everybody? Backpacking mistakes time. Dumb backpacking mistakes that only idiots make, and you might be thinking, Kyle, that's a pretty serious charge, mistakes that only idiots make. Like, how do you know that only idiots make these mistakes? And let me just say that I know for a fact that at least one idiot has made all of these mistakes before, because I have made all of these mistakes before. Like all of my YouTube videos and titles and stuff, it's kind of a joke, it's tongue-in-cheek. We're gonna have fun with this, so don't take it too seriously, or if you want to take it really seriously and be an asshole, feel free to hit the dislike button. Otherwise, hit like, subscribe, and let's get into the freaking video. I'm just gonna be as obnoxious as I possibly can in this.
Alright everybody, backpacking mistake no-
I can't even, wow, that was... Alright, so backpacking mistake number one that only idiots like me make is not doing food correctly on the trail. So there's a couple different sub mistakes I'm gonna break down, and the first one is gonna be just packing too much food. I'm sure you've probably heard that before, but that is a super common mistake that people make when they're backpacking, and something that even to this day I still struggle with a little bit. I've certainly gotten better with this one. Like when I first started, I would take way too much freaking food. Like, why did I need 5 packs of ramen noodles? And this is an easy mistake to make, honestly, because number one, you don't want to bring not enough food and freaking starve out there. Like, obviously that's a bad thing. So I'm not saying you should pack, less food than you think you need, but backpacking can actually kind of throw off your diet and the amount of calories you're consuming, what you're hungry for. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know this or have experienced this, but seriously, I found that at the beginning of backpacking trips, I tend to not eat as many calories as I probably should. And this is kind of the second part of the mistake, the food mistake that I'm talking about here. It is important, obviously, that you eat a shit ton of food and keep your body fueled while you're crushing miles, while you're going up and over mountains. Like, you gotta have that energy. And yeah, it can just be kind of tricky to consume enough calories sometimes if you just aren't hungry for the kinds of food you brought, or you're just not really in the mood to eat if you're just too tired. Fortunately, if you're doing just a short backpacking trip, like a weekend or something like that, I guess it's probably not the end of the world if you don't eat as much as you probably should, because you'll be back home in just a matter of days. But if you're doing a thru hike, this is especially important. I mean, it is absolutely essential that you're fueling your body with enough calories. This is super tragic, but a guy I met on my thru hike of the Appalachian Trail, a guy I hiked with for almost the entire trail, I'm talking from Springer Mountain to southern Maine, over 2,000 miles. This dude, Mullet Mike, who I've talked about in lots of videos and interviewed a couple times in my podcast Trail Tales, shameless plug, he ended up having to leave the Appalachian Trail when he was only a few hundred miles from completing it. This guy hiked all the way from freaking Georgia to southern Maine, over 2,000 miles, and he just couldn't complete that last stretch of the trail because he wasn't eating enough calories. Don't be an idiot like me when I first started. Don't be an idiot like Mullet Mike and not eating enough. I'm a huge dick for saying that. I'm sorry, Mullet, if you watch this.
F you, Kyle.
Backpacking mistake number two that only idiots like me unfortunately make is not following the nitty-gritty principles of Leave No Trace. Now, I will say that most people follow Leave No Trace in general, so I'm not really talking about obvious violations of Leave No Trace. I mean, certainly you shouldn't violate any of those, and people are definitely idiots if they do, but for the most part I feel it's pretty obvious that you're not supposed to throw trash on the ground and just shit on the side of the trail, although honestly I have seen somebody do that. I'm talking about the lesser obvious rules of Leave No Trace that people might violate accidentally, not really realizing it. So what are these little things I'm talking about? I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, obviously, because there's a lot, but I'm talking about little things like burning trash, for instance. You shouldn't be burning trash, but I could see somebody doing that, just not really realizing that you're not supposed to. Another one, this is the one that I've done before, cutting switchbacks. I mean, here in the East Coast, in the White Mountains of the Adirondacks, there's not very many switchbacks, so I haven't had that many opportunities to cut them, but when I first started out on various sections of the Long Trail here in Vermont, there are a couple switchbacks, and I've definitely kind of just taken the path of least resistance before when I saw the switchbacks, and later went on to realize that, yeah, you're not really supposed to do that. It kind of erodes the trail. It's just not very good. Another big one here, and this one might piss off the bushcrafters, which I have a knack for doing apparently.
You, Kyle.
Cutting down live trees for firewood. You're really not supposed to do that when you're on the trail. You're supposed to just use dead and downed wood if you're gonna have a fire at all. And again, the reason I'm talking about these like lesser obvious violations is because I really do feel like they can be done in like good faith, you know? I feel like it's pretty obvious that like fucking littering trash on the side of the trail is like bad, and you're not only an idiot for doing that, but you're kind of just an asshole. These violations are just more subtle, and they're not really done out of just straight up like malice. They're more just kind of ignorance, and you know, you just don't really fucking know what you're doing like I didn't when I first started. Backpacking mistake number 3 that only idiots like me make. Anyways, so this one is one I still struggle with to this day, honestly, and this one involves planning. And I feel like I could be more specific and say planning too much or planning too little. It kind of depends on what you're doing, so I'm just gonna group that shit into one mistake. I don't actually think you're an idiot if you have trouble with planning, because yeah, it is so difficult, because if you plan too much, then it might kind of take away from your experience. You're just not gonna be able to adapt to certain situations that might come up on the trail. And if you plan too little, obviously it could hit the fan, you could get yourself in trouble and maybe even hurt yourself. Nobody wants to have that happen. I am very much a planner in my life. Like when I woke up this morning, I already knew what my entire plan for the day was, which includes shooting this stupid video. And when I'm backpacking, I like to know like where I'm gonna stop for lunch, when I'm gonna get going in the morning, where I'm gonna camp that night, certainly when my next resupply is, if I'm doing like a through hike or a longer hike. And honestly, all that planning can kind of just get overwhelming sometimes, and if you're like dead set on a certain plan, it might make it difficult for you to kind of realize that there might actually be a better option like in the moment, or a reason to kind of modify that plan even though you're already like executing it. I think you guys get what I'm saying there. And then the same thing obviously for planning too little. I think it's a little bit more clear how that could go wrong, but if you're just not prepared for stuff and you didn't do your homework, then yeah, you're kind of fucked. So backpacking, I just spit everywhere. Backpacking mistake number 4 that only idiots like me make is not listening to your body. And this is especially important on a through hike, but it can definitely be important just for a short hike, even a day hike, honestly. I feel like a lot of the time this either comes down to ego, ignorance, or a combination of both, but I've seen so many freaking times where people are just pushing themselves beyond what their bodies are capable of when they're hiking. And I've done this certainly as well. I'm gonna link a video talking about, I linked this video in like all of my videos, but when I tried to hike the long trail, if you watch my videos, you know what I'm talking about, and my body failed on me. Anyways, it's easy to be cocky when you first start out. It's easy to go out there, feel good for like your first couple miles, and then just really ramp up the pace. Next thing you know, you're like bent over in a fucking stream somewhere, your feet are just bleeding and blistered, and you're probably never gonna ever hike again. And honestly, this one kind of ties into my last point about planning too, because let's say you're planning on doing X amount of miles, turns out after, I don't know, half of that or whatever amount after that, answer your fucking phone! I don't even remember what I was saying now. Let's say your body isn't doing too hot, but you still want to make the miles that you planned. Well, sometimes you gotta kind of put that ego aside, listen to your body, and call it early. And maybe this could work like the opposite way too, I guess. Maybe you're feeling like really good, but you just keep doing like short days for some reason, and you're kind of bored and not having fun. I mean, I feel like that's probably not very common, but hey, it could happen, I guess. This next backpacking mistake that only idiots like me make, although to be honest with you, I've actually never made this one. So this is like the only one I haven't, and thank God, because it's kind of dangerous. This is where my ridiculous thumbnail idea came from. This mistake is not taking wildlife seriously. Fortunately, I don't think this is a huge problem, but I was still able to dig up a picture online of a dude taking a selfie with a fucking bear, so clearly some people make this mistake. This mistake can be super blatant, like going up to a bear like in that picture, or just getting too close to an animal to try to take a picture or whatever, or trying to like pick up a rattlesnake or like kill a rattlesnake. Like, it can also be more subtle, so maybe you're not hanging your food properly when you're camping in bear territory, or even just like leaving it in a shelter somewhere so all the mice can get it. Or how about not being mindful of where you're stepping when you're hiking in rattlesnake territory? You should always be looking down, making sure you can see where your next step is going to be so that you don't step on one of those stupid, mean, danger noodle snakes. Come on, folks. You gotta take wildlife seriously. I know most of you already do that. The vast majority of you already do that. But if you don't, you are an idiot. And I am an asshole. And the last backpacking mistake that only idiots make is subscribing to Dan Becker. There's definitely lots of other backpacking mistakes that people make, so if you're an idiot and you've made some backpacking mistakes, definitely leave a comment and let me know what they are, or if you've seen other idiots making backpacking mistakes. Let's all just be a bunch of freaking idiots in the comments. Thanks for watching.